Mato vanchati tatvavit kim dharapamai rite darshava vaye kantamatir nanyat mato vanchati tatvavit kim dharapamai prite tatapi vibhudarshava Mai kanta matir nanyat mata kanchati kim darapam mai prite tatapi vibudhar shabha mai kanta matir nanyat kim darapam mai prite tatapi vibudhar shabha Maye kantamatir nanyat mato vanchati tatvavit kim what? Darapam difficult to obtain. Maye when I prite satisfied tatapi still vibudha rishabha O best of the intelligent demigods Mai in me ekanta exclusively fixed matihi whose attention na anyat not anything other mataha than me vanchati desires tatvavit one who knows the truth. Translation, oh, best of the intelligent demigods, although it is true that nothing is difficult for one to obtain when I am pleased with him, a pure devotee whose mind is exclusively fixed upon me does not ask me for anything but the opportunity to engage in devotional service. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. When the demigods finished offering their prayers, they anxiously waited for their enemy Vritrasura, to be killed. This means that the demigods are not pure devotees. Although without difficulty one can get anything he desires if the Lord is pleased, the demigods aspire for material profit by pleasing the Lord. The Lord wanted the demigods to pray for unalloyed devotional service, but instead they prayed for an opportunity to kill their enemy. This is the difference between a pure devotee and a devotee on the material platform. Indirectly, the Lord regretted that the demigods did not ask for pure devotional service. I was thinking to have a shorter class than usual and see if we can have more discussion than sometimes. Let's see what happens. Because there's so many nice things to say about pure devotional service. Start with, it's the Bhagavatam's message. the message of paradharma. And paradharma in contrast with the other portions of the Vedas that Vyasadeva compiled prior to compiling Srimad Bhagvatam, where search very hard and you'll find the Lord is there, but you'll also find all kinds of other things. In Sri Brahma Samhita, Bhaktisiddhanta says something very curious. It's even a little hard to follow. That the Vedas, of course, they come from Narayana, but they emanate in ether, and therefore the Vedas themselves are not transcendental. It's very much related to this, mixed devotional service or approaching the Supreme Lord to get something. So approaching, this is the commonality amongst, rather than paradharma, dharma or religion in general is approaching God because one wants something. Exactly what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Traigunya Vishaya Veda. The Vedas deal mainly with Vishaya. What's that? It's sense enjoyment. Vedas deal mainly with sense enjoyment. Nishtraigunya Bhavarjana. So there is an element that's beyond Vishaya. But when one approaches the Vedas, or one approaches God, or whatever, religion, spirituality, with the idea of Vishaya, then it's not the message of Bhagavad Gita, it's not the message of Srimad Bhagavatam, and it's pervasive. The other is pervasive. Bhagavatam is teaching go beyond. Not go beyond this world and get to the heavenly realm. I mean, let's put it this way. Before Krishna consciousness, did you have a faint, foggy clue of an idea of the distinction between heaven and the kingdom of God? No way. Heaven is a good place to go. It's where you go when you're good. Let's go. Don't ask what it's like, just, it's a good place. And what to speak of the kingdom of God? No distinction. Or, same question asked in a different way. The mode of goodness and Vishuddha Sattva. Any distinction before Krishna consciousness? And if you want to make a distinction and you don't have Krishna consciousness, what do you get? You get impersonalism. Beyond the modes. No more modes. What's that? Brahman. Because with that paradigm, variety is a manifestation of the mode. So in Brahman, there's no variety. And it doesn't get better than that, as far as impersonal are concerned. Doesn't get better than that. And then when they hear about variegatedness within transcendence, no. Follow. So hearing Krishna Katha, in their mind, they relegate it to, either fanciful talk, or at best, it's a refined, high-grade mode of goodness. And beyond that is Brahman. So when it gets to the message of surrender to Krishna, a jack comes out of the box. Don't surrender to Krishna. Surrender to the impersonal unborn within Krishna. It's offensive, but that's the program. So it's either Vishaya, or if you want to be, like beyond the mode of goodness kind of spirituality, you want to be like really spiritual, then you go for Brahman. In the final analysis, isn't it all one? No variety. Because variety comes from the modes of nature. And we want to go beyond the modes of nature, so no variety. For a Vaishnava, it's harsh talk, although it sounds like sweet mode of goodness talk, or even transcendental talk. It's harsh. It's offensive to the personality of Godhead. And so the Bhagavatam is teaching us paradharma, dharma that goes beyond the modes of nature. And so beyond doing dharma, so you get artha, so you get kama, so you get moksha. It's beyond. It's the fifth, in conventional language. The fifth dimension sounds mystical. Fifth dimension. We only know three. And then there's a fourth, and then there's a fifth. So fifth dimension. Beyond moksha. What's beyond moksha? Krishna. He's the basis and support of that. He's the giver of that. And even more confidential is he gives devotional service. So that's what's being said in the conclusion of the purport. What Krishna really, Lord Vishnu is saying is, it's really unfortunate you just aren't asking for devotional service. You pleased me, and now you want something within this temporary realm. In particular, you want your enemy to be killed. I mean, there's a portion of the Vedas that deals with that. It's a karma kanda thing. A yajna it's exactly what Twashta did to create Vritrasura. I think it's in the Atharva Veda section, is how to deal with opposing elements, like how to get rid of people. So that's what he did. He did a karma kanda ritual that was to get rid of Indra. Only he made a little boo-boo. He pronounced one syllable wrong. But it's not only he did one little boo-boo. He's just very powerful. So this process isn't false. I mean, it's false in the absolute sense. It's false in it's a misdirected sense, but it's powerful. Vedic procedures done properly are powerful. Anyway, the Bhagavatam wants us to understand the distinction between mixed and pure devotion. Krishna does this in Bhagavad Gita. Chapter 7 and chapter 9, he addresses the distinction between worship of him and worship of those that's meant for him, but they do it avidhi purvakam. They do it improperly. So the reason they do it improperly is they have strong material desire. So strong material desire clouds one's everything. Senses, mind, intelligence. Even you read the Veda, even you read the verse of Bhagavad Gita, surrender unto me, and you get something else from it. So, intended for Krishna but misplaced. Misplaced both in terms of intention, that's the worship of the demigods, but also the bhokta of that yajna. So in the verse, connecting to the previous verse, Kim Dorapam Mayi Prite. The previous verse, he said, Pritoham Va, you have pleased me. And now in this verse he's saying, when one has pleased me, Mayi Prite, Kim Dorapam. What's difficult to obtain? Dorapam. There's nothing difficult to obtain. So you could just ask for unmixed devotional service. You could. Similarly, we could, and we're being encouraged to. Then comes this, yeah, but, and like the whole discussion that we had during the Memorial Weekend Gita-Naga retreat about acceptance and progress. Well, what if my position is here, and I know that the goal is here, but the reality is my position is here. People ask this all the time: is it okay? Or I thought we were not supposed to pray for anything material. Like somebody that's sick, a loved one that's having some medical difficulty. So what are you supposed to do? Don't pray to Krishna for their well-being. Now, Prabhupada gave us the teaching when during his illness, he gave a particular prayer. It wasn't like Krishna cure Prabhupada. It was, my dear Lord Krishna, if you so desire, please allow Srila Prabhupada to continue guiding and directing us, and for his good health is required. Kindly hear our prayer. Or something that started some years ago, and they still do it in Los Angeles whenever you visit the LA temple. Right after Mangalarti, my dear Lord Krishna, if you so desire, please send some Sankirtan devotees so that we can increase the distribution of Srila Prabhupada's books. Or any other similar type of thing. So is there place in the cultivation of Shuddha Bhakti for asking for anything other than pure devotional service? Well, let's analyze that a bit. What's pure devotional service? What does, say it the other way, what does Rupa Goswami say about renunciation? And true renunciation, here we go, anasaktasya vishayan, without attachment to sense gratification. That's where it starts. Without attachment to sense gratification, yatarham upayunjitaha. I'm sure you hear, I'm assuming that you hear Jai Jagannath speak about this regularly. He likes to talk about it. So, yatarham is according to suitability. Upayunjitaha, one is so engaged. And that's the platform of pure devotional service. Oh, that's the platform of renunciation. It's without attachment to sense gratification, one accepts things. And what should I accept? Well, according to suitability, I should accept. And that can mean a lot of different things according to suitability. For a sense gratifier and a mental speculator, it's romper room. But for a sincere and serious devotee, it's what I require to remain stable, or I can engage in a sustainable way in devotional service. And you consider objects. Do I need a computer? Do I need a pair of shoes? Do I need 2 pairs of shoes? sandals and something that I wear outside when I, go for a walk, and I want, something, do I need 3 pairs of shoes, something for the winter? Anyway, according to suitability. And, one should be cautious about accepting things, because we may end up accepting things with the idea that I'm going to nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagya uchate. I may be engaging it in Krishna's service, and it turns out that you're being engaged in Maya's service instead of you're engaging something in Krishna's service. You have to be very vigilant. In my office in New York, there's 2 pictures on. There's many things, but of the many pictures on my wall, there's one with Bhaktisiddhanta riding in a convertible through the streets of Vrindavan, wearing a big coat. And sannyasis aren't supposed to ride in conveyances, like being carried in a palanquin like kings. So this wasn't even being carried in a palanquin, it was riding in a car, and it wasn't even riding in a car, it was a convertible. And he's waving to people. Because his message in Vrindavan was not like he needed a convertible, but for Krishna service, one can utilize things in Krishna service. I remember when the first year, I think it was 1974, that went to Vrindavan. And Guru Das was taking us to different temples. Has Guru Das visited here? No. No. Okay. He was an interesting guide. And one of the places he took us to was not a Gaudiya Math temple, some other temple, like a big, rich, large space temple. I don't remember the name of it. I can't remember right. So, but one of the things he took us there for was to show us this little machine that Bhaktisiddhanta had used for preaching. And it was like, whenever the year was that it was made, it was Vrindavan, and then over there is Govardhan Hill, and over here is Nandagram, and over there is Varsana, and then there's trees and grass. It's just you call those things manufactured landscape kind of thing, but 3-dimensional. And then underneath there's a whole series of chains, and so you crank the thing, and Krishna goes out to herd the cows. And there goes Krishna, and there goes the cows, and the cowherd boys, and they head for Govardhan Hill. And then you have to crank it back, and then they go back to Nandagram. It was amazing. He was utilizing things, like following him, Srila Prabhupada utilized things to bring the message, to depict Krishna so the mind could grasp it. So one can utilize, his favorite example was microphone. You can utilize technology, although it's material and the purpose behind it is, really something other than broadcasting the glories of Krishna by the manufacturers. But we can utilize that something in Krishna's service. He used airplanes to travel around the world and give his association. And that was previously a no-no. Sannyasis are not supposed to cross the sea. We crossed the sea in a boat, then he crossed the sea in an airplane. He crossed the sea, violated. Anyway, to utilize things in Krishna's service. But the first line is anasaktasya vishayan. Asakti is attachment, and anasakti is without attachment. Without attachment. Without attachment to what? Sense gratification. With attachment to Krishna. Yatarham upayunjataha. Nirbandha Krishna Sambhad. So, utilizing things in Krishna's service. That's the platform of pure devotional service. Now, this verse, I'm going to end very abruptly, so get ready. This verse is the first of three that say the same thing. It's teaching, Lord Vishnu is teaching the demigods. It's like, a Bhagvatam class for demigods. And they're hearing what pure devotional service is. But they're not ready for pure devotional service. They're holding on tightly to material desire. So it's mixed devotional service. But he's making it clear what's the difference between the two. And pure devotional service, one only asks for pure devotional service. And so I'm going to add something else. And my thought is going to, in yesterday's verse, one of the terms was Atma Aishvarya Smritihi. And so the Aishvarya means opulence. And the demigods were appreciating, while we have opulence, he's really opulent. And it's not like I wish I had his opulence, but they were respecting him. He is the source of our opulence. And he has, a big warehouse of opulence. He's got a big supply. He's all opulent. He's Bhagavan. He has all opulences. So they have that regard for the opulence, transcendental opulence of the Supreme Lord. In a very nice pastime in Chaitanya Charitamrita is the Hera Panchami festival. The Hera Panchami festival is part of the Rath Yatra festival. You know what Rath Yatra is? So in Puri, it's not just you go to a park and you have a festival and it's over. It's a grand ceremony, and it's days and days. And so in preparation, the bathing, and it's so many things. And then after recuperating, he gets on his cart and he goes in procession on Grand Road to Gundicha, and he stays there. Some days later, Panchami, maybe 5 days later, the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, big festival, she comes out of the temple, and a jeweled throne. And the servitors are dressed very opulently, and there's music, and it's very loud and opulent. Did you say that for that, the Hera Panchami festival? And in procession, in a haughty mood, she goes to the Gunjita temple, and her servants have sticks in their hands, and they start to beat the servants of Jagannath and order that he comes back. I'm his wife, and he's going to come back now. And they promise, yes, he'll come back. He'll come back. And seeing the festival, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates are seeing the festival, and Srivas Pandit, in the mood of Narada Muni, is ecstatic. Just see the opulence of the goddess of fortune. Her opulence, because just previously Swarup Damodar was speaking the glories of Vrindavan. And here comes the glories of the goddess of fortune. Just see, she puts the opulence of Vrindavan to shame. What do they have? But some pieces of straw and some cows, and look at the opulence. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, you sound just like Narada Muni. Because he's Narada Muni. And then he turns to Swarup Damodar and say, well, essentially, please, what do you have to say about this statement made by Srivas Pandit? And he says that he starts describing the glories of Vrindavan and the opulence of Vrindavan. And he goes on and on and on and on about the opulence of Vrindavan and says, the goddess of fortune, her throne has jewels, but in Vrindavan, everything is made of chintamani. Everything is made of jewels. The what they make houses out of is made of jewels. And they have kalpavriksha trees like this verse 56 from Brahma Samhita. Basically, it's a paraphrase of that. All the trees are desire trees. Or Chintamani Prakara Sadmasuk Kalpavriksha Lakshavrites. There's lakhs of goddesses of fortune in Goloka. Not just one. Lakhs. Lakh is 100,000. Plural. Many hundreds of thousands. Millions. All trees are purpose trees. Purpose trees. They fulfill everything that you want. And the cows, they supply unlimited amounts of milk. And basically, in Goloka, practically everything can supply practically anything. And that's Goloka. And Srivas was very happy to hear how he was being defeated. And started jumping and clapping and making some sound with his hand under his armpits, and I don't know how you do that, but everyone was laughing. So the opulence, this is back to the demigods. The demigods want, a problem solved. He's a pretty terrific problem, Vritrasura, created by the offense, the killing of their priest by Indra. It's the reaction. So they want, release from the reaction. So the residents of Vrindavan, one might wonder, well, if they have all this, practically everything can supply anything, one would expect that they would live like a very high lifestyle. Very grand and, big mansions and, whatever else people consider to be opulent. But they live a very simple life. Why? Because they're pure devotees. They only want one thing: satisfy Krishna. So if they want to make a nice offering for Krishna, the kalpavriksha trees can easily supply it. But that's their only desire. The desire is pleasing Krishna, happiness of Krishna. And the happiness of Krishna isn't in Vrindavan. It isn't big palaces. His happiness is the loving exchange. So they know, and that's what they do. And whatever is that helps their loving exchange, that's what they do. There's verses written by our acharyas that say that chintamani, sometimes they use as ankle ornaments, sometimes they use to put on the top of their thongs, their shoes, their sandals, their chappals. They're not enamored. Like Sanatana Goswami had his sparsha money in the garbage. Pure devotees, on the one side, vishaya, and on the other side, relief from distress. That's not their meditation. Their meditation is devotional service that's pure. So, Vishnu is promoting that. The demigods aren't ready to handle it. So what does he do? 4 verses later, he gives them the solution to their problem. Wait till you hear the next two verses. You know, a devotee, Krishna doesn't and a devotee doesn't fulfill material desire. But he fulfills their material desire. He gives them a means to get rid of Ritrasura. But how does he do it? He gives them association with a perfected being, a devotee, Dadichi, who knows both karma-kanda rituals, but also is anasaktasya vishayan. He's without attachment. He's without attachment even to his body, what to speak of gratification of his body. Through his association, they'll become purified. They'll get what they want, but more importantly, they'll become purified. And that's the personality of Godhead. I was thinking where that reference is. Maybe you know where the reference is. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna considers persons that approach me for some material thing, I'm not such a fool, I'm going to give them some material thing. It'll entangle them more in complexities of material existence. But if I do give them something, I do in such a way they'll never come back again. That is, I'll give them my 2 lotus feet in that process. And it's very similar, let's say, for example, with Narada Muni and what he does with Nala Kuvera and Manigriva. He purifies them. He gives them relief of their blind pride. And then on the other side, the association of Krishna. So that when they go back to their position of Nala Kuvera and Manigriva, the sons of Kuvera, they're not pure devotees because of the kindness of Narada. So it's the teaching of para bhakti, unmixed devotional service, because that's the word that's here, ekanta matir, in the 3rd line. Mayi ekanta matir nanyat. In me, their attention, matir, or mind, but attention, ekanta, completely fixed. Nothing else, nanyat. For one who has that, what is difficult to obtain? They should aspire for that. So that's the message for us. We should aspire for that. If our situation is such that something due to being in a not so evolved state of consciousness yet, something seems to be like gnawing and driving you nuts, then, my dear Lord Krishna. So we may do like that. But there's this nice verse in the 11th canto, another one of, anyway, another very favorite verse is a devotee who recognizes they have that continuing, lingering desire for something temporary. They may, knowing that it is limited and temporary, regret that it's there, still act on it, but still pray to Krishna for coming to the position of pure devotional service. Aspire to go beyond our little limitations of desiring something limited and temporary. Hanker and cultivate pure devotional service even when we're not at that platform. We're not to imitate, that's not sustainable, and it's what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, it's false. We shouldn't imitate, but we can cultivate, follow the example of, and the teachings of, step by step. Continue to make steps to get to that position of pure devotional service. Okay. Any comments or questions? Yes.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for your class, Maharaj. My question is coming from this point you're making in your class that we should aspire to cultivate pure devotional service. And I was thinking that in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna presents a science for how to gradually purify the conditioned soul so he can come to a pure stage. And he begins his instructions by performing duty and acting with detachment from the fruits of one's activities. So my question is this: I find for myself personally, even in devotional service, doing so many things with the fruitive angle, thinking that I'll get appreciated or I'll get recognized or wash the pots real nicely so that, so many subtle desires. So I don't even know where to begin because I feel like...
You don't know where to begin?
In terms of, if I feel like if I'm not able to even give up detachment to the results of my activities, I feel like that's the first step. At least come to the stage of being detached from the fruits of one's service. So how do I
you've
even
already
begin
come to the
do
first
that?
step. You've already come to the first step. You recognize that it's there. Most people don't even recognize that it's there. They don't have a clue. They're just living their life. They're a normal guy. And you have a clue. And in addition, you have chanting. You have the process that will cleanse. Cheto Darpana Marjanam. And in addition, you have Bhagavad Gita as it is. And there's this little desire inside that says, this is impure. This hankering for recognition and so forth and so on. So you've begun. Now you continue. Apply the cleansing process. Try, cultivate, acting not in an imitative way, but acting in a manner that will be pleasing to Krishna instead of the other. That's how. In that verse, it's Uddhava Gita section, Krishna's teaching that one regrets. But what can you do? Because that's the, due to past activities, that's where you are at the moment. So you cultivate. In regret the contamination, apply the process that removes the contamination. Strive to act in your relationship with Krishna without anything else going on. I'm not there yet. So, but that's the next step. You aspire for, and hear, and chant, and try to act, strive to act in that consciousness, acknowledging one's own present situation and limitations. That's what to do. Anushilana, in the language of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, you cultivate. That's what you do. Yeah.
I really only have one question, but I have a follow-up question.
Go right ahead.
Is it helpful when dealing with material desires which appear in the mind? Is it helpful to make a distinction between the mind and the intelligence? Because we've been discussing Bhagavad Gita here in the ashram. We're on chapter 2. And one thing that comes up is like a natural psychological response to the circumstances of our life. And those things...
That's the mind.
That's the mind, you can't help that. But you can't fix your intelligence on what you're supposed to actually be doing. So is it helpful to not identify with those desires that come up and
Yes.
just fix our intelligence
Yes.
on the duty of it?
Yeah, that's very helpful. In fact, may that day come when we can do that.
My other question was about...
So the other one is you tolerate it, you recognizing
Right.
where it's coming from.
Right.
It's coming from desire, and the senses contacting the sense objects, and we get a read on it. That's the mind doing the reading. I like it, or I don't like it, or I'm anticipating happiness, or I'm anticipating distress. That's the mind. And okay, you tolerate that. One has that circumstance because of, past implication in material existence. Now let me operatively change channel. or operationally change the channel. Go ahead.
My second question is related to the verse from the Bhagavatam, akama sarva kama va moksha kama, that
Okay.
whether you're desireless or you have all desires or you have the desire for moksha, if you are intelligence, then one shall worship the Lord with pure devotion. So, and so in relationship to the demigods here, there's, sarva kama, they got full of desires, and they're approaching the Lord. Now, I want to understand what is meant by if you're intelligent, you should approach the Lord with pure devotion. Because that's
Well,
what
it's
the verse
tivra
said.
bhakti specifically.
Yeah, tivra bhakti.
It doesn't say pure devotion. It says strong. So they got it's strong. They're doing it, and because they're doing it, he reciprocates. He appears. Doesn't have to. He appears. He talks to them. He doesn't have to, and he gives them the association with one who can help them come to unmixed devotion. At least, a step or two closer. A step or two, they can handle a step or two. As long as Vitrasra is out of the way, a step or two is okay. So, one gets that association. He ranges. Something else, yes?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So my question was in connection with in connection with the definition of pure devotional service. So as practicing devotees, one thing that I often face is when there are like an accumulation of things in primary relationships, right? Like some unresolved stuff, and so there is a need in me to get some clarity or resolution in them before I can move on. That's how I feel. And but then the definition of pure devotional service is it doesn't. It's continuous. It's spontaneous and continuous. It doesn't. So understanding where I am, my question is. Is it wrong to think like that? That there's something happening in a primary relationship and I need a resolution for that? Because if bhakti is a relationship, I almost feel like I have to be there in the relationship for me to act in the relationship. And if there is something of me that is stuck, I feel my attention goes there, that I need to retrieve that before I can move on or something like that. So I don't know if I'm making sense, the question.
There's many responses, but one significant of the possible responses is is for one to learn to depend upon Krishna. So in response, yes, that's important. However, Krishna may be wanting to bring this resolution at a later time for some transcendental reason. And it may not happen. So if I'm over here saying, well, I can't move on until it gets resolved, and it's not getting resolved, I'm going to start screaming or, throwing my hands up in the air and having a tantrum or something. Because I want it resolved. I can't move until I get it resolved. So, but it may be there are some situations where what Krishna wants is, yes, resolution, but make sure that you're bringing your attention to me, and make sure that you're accepting me as, the Lord of your life, and so it's etc. Your dependence is upon me, not let go of the steering wheel, please. I'm the master, you're the servant, and recognize that relationship. And surely, I mean, it's put it in terms of your son. Your son may want something and can't go on to do the next thing until he gets something resolved, and he wants you to resolve that something. And you see, well, that's not necessarily the best thing for him. Just like he wants something, so I got to address that something. So you may choose to not resolve that something right away, whatever that is, because there's a higher training purpose involved in your relationship with your son. And he doesn't understand that. And you can try to explain it to him, and he's, he can only hear one thing, what he wants. So when you get in a space like this, is a broader answer to your question. When not just this particular thing, but some situation that doesn't seem to be moving in a way that, like, if you were God, you'd have it move, but it's not. So step out of the autobiography and think of a parent-child relationship, and how might this be playing out in a parent-child relationship, and then put yourself back into your own autobiography, and then you can understand a little bit better why things are happening the way that they're happening, or not happening the way that they're not happening, because there's a higher principle that is important for me to connect with. Krishna wants me to learn something. There's a message in all of this. It's not just, I got to get this resolved, and that's all there is in the message. A higher principle, something. Because to do it the other way, supposing that something gets resolved and I haven't understood the higher principle, I'm not necessarily in a better position. I'm more comfortable, but I'm not necessarily in a more transcendental position. Because then something else will come along, and then I become a little preoccupied with, if not obsessed with, I got to get resolution to this something. So then you turn to Krishna and ask the question. And then, supposing it still doesn't get resolved, because in the back of your mind is, well, I really want this thing resolved. Then there may be some attachment on my side to something about this picture. I just shared with somebody asking a similar question for the past 6 months on something they wish to have resolved, and it's not getting resolved. Am I missing something? And I shared, pray to Krishna that the material portion of my attachment to the situation is removed. Queen Kunti's prayers, those two. I think it's 40 and 41, chapter 8. Because it may be that in that primary relationship there's an inordinate amount of attachment on the material side, and then you can define what does material attachment mean, and go from there. Prabhupada, it's very, very simple and beautiful purport. In text 41, he says that certainly attachment to a pure devotee, and Queen Kunti and the Pandavas are pure devotees, has its great benefit. So it's not like attachment to a devotee is wrong. And he writes, but in this case, Queen Kunti has material attachment. And because of the material attachment, she's disturbed. So she's praying, please remove the material portion of my attachment, so it's attachment on the platform of the soul. How can I be in a position of service on the platform of the soul when I'm conditioned? We're not Queen Kunti, we're conditioned. We have our needs. These, we think we have our needs. And anyway, just take a higher ground. The higher principle that's moving, or the reason this is not moving is I'm not capturing the higher principle, and that's in part due to material affinity, my own, which Krishna wants me to let go of. Please, Krishna, take that away from me. Which is the kind of prayer that is being asked of or recommended in this verse. Easy to say, it's another thing to do. Anything else? Yeah. Take the microphone.
Maharaj, I'm sorry for sometimes I may commit offense because of loud voice. Thing is that my question is, Krishna's name is Uttama Sloka. Yesterday we learned that he is pleased by selective verses or selective prayers. And sometimes when a devotee is inundated with love, inundated with love. Yeah. So that means he surpasses the etiquettes and social customs and all regulative principle, everything. Like for example, Lord Nityananda, he broke the sannyasi danda of Lord Chaitanya. Then under that circumstance, whether the Lord was pleased or he was displeased.
But it was a Leela, and part of the Leela was displeased. And it was at least my puny brain's understanding of what was going on is Lord Chaitanya wanted to enter the Jagannath temple alone and conduct another Leela. So he made that arrangement that way, so he could enter the Jagannath temple alone. And then fall to the ground, and then the guards, and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and the whole thing. Leela. Look, when things like perplexing come up, look for the deeper meaning of the Lord's enjoying happiness through pastimes with his devotee, and the devotees assisting the Lord in his transcendental pastimes. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.